Craig, AFL fixtures, there's a temporary on hold, I guess, as well. Is that what you understand?
Yeah, I think the AFL are getting very close to announcements, and I think there's a press conference that's being held shortly over in Melbourne where Gil will give some direction for the whole industry.
Royal Pines, is that the destination of choice for the Eagles?
Perth is the destination of choice, obviously, but we're in a difficult situation and we needed to be flexible. So Royal Pines is going to be where we're going to relocate for 3 to 4 weeks, hopefully.
When will you relocate? Is that arrive there sort of June 8, the week starting June 8?
Yeah, we haven't set a date. We're sort of waiting for the AFL timetable. Bit of work to do in South Australia, which I think they're getting close to. And then we'll have a timetable for the whole industry. I'd anticipate we take off a bit earlier than we would in a normal away game to acclimatise as a group, players and staff. So sometime in the week in the lead up to the season, we'll head across.
And how long do you think you'll go for? You're thinking it's 5 weeks? Is that what you're thinking at this stage?
No, we're planning up to a month. So the 3 to 4 week mentality we've got at the moment, and hoping that public health being the obviously critical factor for everybody, we maintain good levels with the virus over here, and then we hopefully there'll be some change in direction from the government at some point. But obviously we need to work within the guidelines and what's achievable, and with the benefit of West Australian health and the public being the critical factor.
Why Royal Pines, and how do you feel that enables your boys to prepare?
It's a good fit for our football club in terms of climate and facility. I think it's going to be a good opportunity to gather in a space that's a bit bigger and not be as restrictive. The facilities on the Gold Coast are very good for football in terms of availability of ovals, availability of aquatic and gym facilities, which we're still working through, believe it or not, but that's the way it is at the moment. But the range of options we've been given are quite impressive.
What size squad will you take?
Haven't decided yet, Mark. It'll be, initially we're thinking it could be a smaller squad and then a whole group, but we haven't made a final call on that.
Will players' families be allowed to travel?
Potentially. We're working through in a collaborative fashion with the AFL, the opportunities that we can present to our players and staff in terms of living in the interstate hub, and that's one of the factors that's been seriously considered, and we're confident we'll get a positive outcome on.
How much of a win is that for your club, especially? You've got a number, I think it's up to a dozen, even more of the players do have kids as well, and having their partners and children there. How much of a win is that for the club going forward when you're away for a month?
Yeah, it's a constant theme with our player group, the importance of family and our football club and staff as well. So I think it'll be really important from a health and wellbeing perspective if this is a month or potentially longer.
The preference Gold Coast over Melbourne, how much sort of, I guess, negotiation came into the fact that you're taking the Melbourne teams out of Melbourne if you potentially go up there and play any?
Well, Trevor led that discussion on behalf of the club, but we were all aligned from a football department upwards that that's the best fit for West Coast in terms of, as I said, climate and facility. And I think it should provide us with the best of a situation that we're obviously finding ourselves in.
Now, Voz, tell us, have you talked to the AFL about, is it a home game or away games that you're playing up there? Have you got to that stage?
I think Trevor's going as hard as he can on all away games, but we'll wait and see. Obviously, we need to be flexible and sensible as well, in the hope that, at some stage in the latter part of the year, we get a reasonable run of home games, and the AFL are right on top of that as well. And I think they've been really sensible through the whole process and understanding.
How do you address the stringent cuts you're going to have to make to your footy department, Craig? It's going to be a pretty tough ask and some pretty tough calls to make.
Yeah, look, we're concentrating at this situation, Mark, on 2020, and the cuts are significant. And from a personal perspective, I find it really sad. Some of the conversations that you have to have and decisions you have to make. So I'm finding that difficult, and I know other general managers across the league are having the same conversations. But bigger picture wise, from 2021 and beyond, we're going to have to wait and see where things land, and there may be some tougher decisions, but we're hopeful we'll have a reasonable outcome for the industry.
So how would your coaching staff look now compared to what it was when you were getting ready for round one?
It'll be a reduced group, but we're looking at various situations at the moment where people multitask. So it may be you might have a coach helping in other areas because of the limited numbers around teams. You need to have an agile staff. So, you might have a coach that does a bit of coaching. He acts on train day as a running out water potentially or helping with property. So we're working through how all that looks for us and hopeful that we can maintain as many jobs as we can.
And is it possible that your medical staff, some of them won't be able to go because they've got practices here and they can't just fly back and forwards and isolate?
It is. We're working through it and whether we can obtain exemptions for our doctors who are critical to our operation. They do a wonderful job for us. They've been long term for us for a long period of time and they're critical decision makers day to day. So hoping we can get some exemption for our doctors.
Understanding that the JobKeeper allowance is to be included in the TPP, does that create issues for you with some players?
No. So the JobKeeper aspect, as regards our players, is not an issue. That's all been dealt with by Kenwood and the AFL. I think there's still a little bit of work to do, but nothing that we're too concerned about.
Is it possible that some players will be playing for not much at all?
Oh, that side of things, yeah. So that's more a case of the JobKeeper allowance as to what players are entitled to it.
Right.
Yeah, as it's turned out, under the relevant rulings, there are a number of players that we have concerns about not being entitled to JobKeepers, but there's still some ongoing dialogue on that.
How do you feel about the fact that your club, has 40 million or whatever in the bank and is very well positioned, and you still have to cut staff? I mean, is that a very strange feeling? Is that
Firstly,
right?
I'm not sure how much money we actually have in the bank, so
Whatever it is,
sort of
but
not
you don't.
my area.
You wouldn't normally cut this many staff, but it's for equalisation thing, isn't it? You have to do what the Victorians are doing.
Bigger picture-wise, there's a bigger picture at stake too. We play in an equalised competition. Our board, led by our executive and Trevor, have run a fantastic football club for a long period of time and will continue to do so. We need, in this, like everybody else, we're no different at this stage. We need to be fiscally prudent and there have to be efficiencies across our business. It's a difficult one in the sense that we'd love to keep employing as many people as we can because we're proud of that and the effect it has on their lives and their families and building our culture as a football club. So there's a disappointment there, but on the same token, we have to acknowledge that we work in an industry that's suffering financially. So we all have to cut our cloth.
So June 11 is a restart date being thrown around at the moment. Is that too soon? Are there any concerns that you won't be able to get your players to the right level of conditioning and readiness to play football like you're into?
I think if it was any earlier, we would, but our high performance staff are now quite comfortable that we've got next week, building into 2 weeks with more contact, leading into match. And our guys they've been really committed to their individualised programs. So we obviously get to screen them all properly over the next week or so, hopefully. But no, we're confident that time frame can work.
Do the Eagles expect to play any home games this year in Perth?
We're hopeful. Yeah, that we're not planning beyond, as I said earlier, the 3 to 4 weeks. And, things are changing rapidly in this climate and hopefully they continue to change for the better, which means that potentially we can fly in and out of Perth and so can other teams. But I'm hypothesising, but that's our hope.
Can you talk us through what you do know about what the setup over there will be? What's the accommodation like? What's the schedule for the team? What have you been told?
So we're building what will be our schedule as we speak. It's obviously a new issue for us, but the accommodation facilities, not having been there, it's difficult. A few of our staff have in the past, but to play golf, not to stay for a month. So, but the look and the detail that we've been given in information and photographs looks really impressive, and gives us a good opportunity to set up a really good home base. And the collaboration with clubs like the Gold Coast and potentially Brisbane as well has been really first class straight up. So there might be some sharing of facilities there as well, which we're working through, which will be first class facilities. But apart from that, the footy club facilities, there are some other really good gyms and options for our players.
How long do you expect to be there?
Do you anticipate that all of your players are prepared to get the relevant vaccinations?
For Queensland? Yeah, we are. We haven't had any kickbacks so far, so nor from staff at this stage as well.
Do you expect that Western Derby, which could have been proposed earlier, is that now off the cards with Fremantle and let's start the season in Queensland? Is that what you're thinking?
I'm not sure. Look, the fixture we haven't been advised of yet, and in the AFL's defence, things are a moving target. So I'm not sure if it's off the table. We'll see. We're not planning for it to be on the table, but if it ends up being there, that'll be a bonus for us.
You talk about shared facilities. Is that what you're thinking? Yourself and the Dockers going to go to Royal Pines and potentially even share a chartered flight over to Gold Coast?
We haven't talked flights. I'd imagine we'd be looking at efficiencies, so that'll probably be the case, and yeah, that'd be fine as well. Certainly sharing Royal Pines is the option that we've been presented, and we're happy with that as well.
Do you understand that once you get there, the players won't be able to use those golf facilities and outside areas as well, or what's the...
No, we're working through collaboratively with the AFL on the do's and don'ts to come up with a set of guidelines that are reasonable and sensible, and we're really confident we'll achieve that for our players. I think the industry and the AFL acknowledge that our guys and our staff are making a really significant sacrifice for the better good, which we're proud that they're doing. And I think there'll be some sensible solutions. I'm confident there will be.
And that means sensible as in being able to actually go out and use the resorts facilities as well?
Yeah, I think to live more broadly than in a quarantine type situation, with the health and well-being of people being the priority for us as a club and the AFL as an industry.
Has everyone had their flu jab, Voz? Have they?
Started to, so our doctor started rolling them out. I'm not a big fan of the flu jab, but I have to have one. So I'm going to have my first ever soon, I think. And yeah, I'm expecting most. Well, I think they all have to actually for Queensland law.
Have you had any players come to you and say, look, I'm not sure I'm going to go?
No, they haven't. But they've certainly had lots of questions, as I would as a player and as our staff have. So we need to work through those, and we won't be forcing anyone to go, by the way, either. And that'll be an individual decision, and no one will be judged either if they don't. So I'm not saying anyone won't, but I'm hopeful they will, and we'll see how we go.
Those efforts to try and get a hub set up here in WA, were those arguments, are you satisfied they were heard out properly by the state government and by the AFL?
Well, we weren't privy to the detail of those, and we hope they were heard properly and the conclusion was reached. But it's yesterday for us. We're moving forward.
And the testing now. Yeah, the testing, is that happening here today? Push all your players through.
Yeah, so we've got approval, Barrow, yesterday actually, to have the testing for our group. So the vast majority of the guys will be tested today. There's a few that'll be odds and ends through the weekend, and you get the results back, I think, within 24 hours. So we're confident that if the AFL push the button for early next week, we'll all be tested and ready to go, other than the quarantine guys who'll have to remain in quarantine and training separately from the group as per now.
You're confident that the team and everyone at the club's been able to handle that situation pretty well? Obviously hoping for no positive results, but in terms of the quarantine, not breaking and abiding by the rules, you're happy that everyone's been doing the right thing?
The quarantine...
In terms of players and training regulations, the whole...
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I was talking about the 5 quarantine players earlier. Yeah, look, the living under stricter and tighter protocols, I think it's been difficult across the whole competition, given that the different states have different rules and regulations in terms of gatherings, etc. But on the whole, I think the industry's treated it really seriously as you need to, and society has to as well. So, yeah, I'm confident everyone's done well.
And the boys, once they've had this test, they have to back off again and go back into sort of semi-isolation in their homes?
I think it's common sense and normal social distancing and public health protocol until the AFL pushed the button on what the season start date is, etc. And then I think we're waiting on some additional protocols. Certainly the protocols around training and return to play are really clear. So we're getting on top of all those as provided by the AFL from a staffing perspective to educate our players. We're confident here, but we're still working on educating our players on what the do's and don'ts will be outside of the football club.
What's the date for your players to come out of isolation and follow?
I think it's Thursday. Yeah, I think it's next Thursday.
It's quite a trial for players though, from going forward after the test today. They basically shouldn't be going out as much as they can't, and then they go to Royal Pines and the same thing.
Yeah, there's some sacrifice. Yeah, there definitely is, and that's why the earlier point you guys raised around what Royal Pines living might look like is really important from a health and wellbeing perspective. They can't be restricted to sitting in a room for a month potentially, and the AFL that's not even a consideration. Kate Hall at the AFL was doing a great job in terms of the health and wellbeing aspect and keeping clubs up to date with all that. She's really clear on some of the things that are important to people in these difficult times, and no doubt that'll permeate through what we can and can't do.
So Monday, just for clarification, Monday it's given the all clear to train. I think it's 2 contact sessions for the week, and then the week after, starting the 25th, it's full contact as much as you want for a fortnight.
So next week, if we get the go ahead, is a no contact week at all, and then it's as per your discussion.
And is that capped at 2 training sessions next week, or is that as many sessions as you like?
No, I think we've got 3 potentially. I'm assuming a start date, which we haven't been given, of early next week, and they're in groups of 8.
In groups of 8
no
next
contact.
week, no contact.
That's level B criteria, they've called it.
And then the week after
is contact level C with broader groups potentially.
So, Voz, if you're only going for a month, then it probably won't be a 16 hub, do you think? Is that what you're thinking?
No, I think there's talk about the South Australian teams relocating to Queensland as well. So I'm pretty sure that's now a situation that they've been forced into with the government regulations. So beyond the month, we don't know. I think the whole industry is going to remain fairly flexible through this phase, and I think the AFL will probably, when they do release fixtures, it'll be in blocks rather than whole year.